Welcome to the Winner's Playbook with Steve and Josh. Disclaimer: the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances. Please head to the show notes if you wish to book a free 15-minute call to discuss your personal situation.
Guys, welcome to our podcast. I've got Steve and myself here, both the directors of Link Wealth Group. So today I just want to chat a little bit about money, some of the things that we're seeing out there in the markets, some personal stories as well in terms of, some of the first investments that we ever made, some of the mistakes that we made along the way, and what's kind of brought us to where we are today. So welcome, Steve.
Yeah, cheers, Josh. Great to be here, mate.
Good to be here as well, mate. So, we're going to sort of just kick off in a bit of an introduction, more so talking about, how we first got exposed to money and investing to begin with. So, very curious to just get a bit of a nice idea, Steve. What about for yourself? When did you first actually get interested in money, investing, finance? Because this is actually something I don't even know about you.
Yeah, good, mate. Look, from a very early age, I had a passion. I think I got known as the kid walking around school with a fin review, believe it or not. So
Yeah,
like
right.
all
That's
the
different.
teachers actually knew me as the person that walked around school and with a fin review under my arm. And I was fascinated to look at like the stock market indices in the back of the fin review every day. It was weird sometimes.
Yeah.
And that carried through to TAFE and then uni. And so it happened early on. And the funny thing is, I think my first foray into an investment, I went on a ski trip to Canada one year, and I ended up breaking my leg over there. And I got a big insurance payout, and I thought, you know what, I know the stock market. I know the stock market, so I'll have a crack at this. And I think I put it all on OneTel, which was a company that was backed
Right.
by James Packer and the like at the time. And about 6 months later, it went bust, and I lost all my cash. So that was my first foray into investing. But I tell you what, it taught me some really, really good lessons really early on that I still carry through today, to be honest. And clearly one of those is diversification. So that's that was a good message. But so that was my first foray, mate. I've just been passionate from day one. And then got into small business as a young guy at the age of 21. I actually owned a bar and a pub at the age of 21 in Sydney.
Is that because you
And that
like to
got
drink a bit, Steve, or what was the
no,
motivation
no,
there?
mate. It was more around. My godfather actually owned a hotel, and it
Right.
was part of that hotel. So that sort of got me into the small business thinking, and then combine that with studies, and I enjoyed accounting and finance, and did a bit of international finance overseas at uni in London, and and then just kicked off from there. So yeah, that was my backstory.
What about just from a exposure as a child? So you mentioned about like having the fin review as a kid, but where did that like come from? Or did you have any family members in business, finance, investing, or was it something that you just genuinely stumbled upon yourself?
Yeah, look, I think I had a very close relationship with my godfather, who was very big in business in Sydney, and had lots of multiple businesses, from horse racing to hotels to construction. So I got exposed through him, I think, into that business world at a quite early age, and so I was fascinated just in numbers, and I think one thing he taught me is you got to give it a go to to be successful at anything. You just got to give it a go. Don't be afraid to lose sometimes. And so that got me ingrained pretty early. Look, I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, so I wanted to sort of change that a bit. So combine that all together, it probably got me thinking, and then
Yeah.
I just found my feet. I originally went into accounting to start with, and accounting wasn't quite for me. I did all the studies around accounting, but that wasn't. It was great for business, but didn't really interest me as much as finance. And then found my finance legs, and loved it ever since, mate. That's where it's been.
Yeah, no, it's good story. And I
How
think
about
one of the
yourself, Josh? What's your
yeah.
backstory, mate? Give me your inclination of how it all started.
Yeah, so for me, as I was touching on, I wasn't really exposed by any sort of family members, so to speak, not at a very young age. What really triggered my interest initially was always kind of interested in money and finance, but I think because of no one in my family actually having been in that space. I think that's probably what delayed me getting into it. I never really studied anything in relation to it. I was a pretty bad kid in high school as well, so I wasn't too amazing at my studies there, but always had this interest more so around business and just the creation and making money, and had various side hustles and things like that. But what really triggered me to get into finance from the get-go was, I think it was on maybe my 17th birthday or my 18th birthday, my nana actually gave me this share market book, which was a introduction to the ASX, and had no idea what it was, but just got stuck into it. And that's what like really was like a bit of a light bulb moment for me, when I could see that you could put your money into something and it could pay you for you virtually doing nothing. That's what really triggered it for me. And at the time, I was bouncing around a couple of different jobs out of high school. I was actually in security, as a security guard. So that was a bit of fun, not really. And then, I was actually concreting at the time as well. So working full time, doing some security work. And at that exact same time as well is what really provoked me to get into my studies and start, getting into finance and whatnot. And that's really where then the investment journey really kicked off. I still remember my first investment was A2 Milk, which is actually still a company that's around today. That was my first ever company I bought. And I still remember, I think I purchased them around about $2, watched them go up to, I think they cracked out to nearly about $18 or $20
Wow.
at one point in time, and was lucky enough to actually take some money off the table. And now I've watched them nearly come all the way back down. And funnily enough, I actually still hold a few A2 Milk shares I don't really hold any investments in my name for various reasons, which we'll probably get into in another podcast when we sort of dig into the financial sort of strategy and things like that. But I actually still hold those A2 Milk shares, and I think I might just hold on to them forever, just for the sake of it.
So, what, are you telling everyone that you're a better investor than me? Is that what you're trying to allude to here, or?
I think it's more luck. I think it's more luck, and that's what I always talk to clients about. Particularly, stock picking is so hard to get done right. And I remember someone that I sort of met when I got my investment journey started, said that you haven't really become a true investor until you've actually felt a loss on an investment. And as you kind of alluded to earlier, it really opened your eyes, and you learn a lot of, I think, valuable lessons from it. It's not easy. Investing's not easy.
Yeah. It's amazing those small moments, like you getting that book, triggering your thought process right, and where to. It's amazing how those little small moments in your life can drastically change the direction you go.
100%. And I think it's, all a lot of, who and it's obviously a big part of what we're trying to do with our clients as well, is, be that sort of trigger point for them in their life to kickstart their journey and whatever, that may ultimately, look like. And ever since then, I guess one of the key lessons I actually take away from all of that, particularly around stock picking and so on and so forth, is it really taught me a lot of what you do in, I think, your early years. It teaches you what not to do. And I think a lot of how I got started in my investment journey, like we're so big on our social media and talking on, Instagram, TikTok and the like. And I always preach about it, like, stock picking, it sounds like a great way to build wealth, but even the experts that, spends millions and millions of dollars on it every year can't even do it successfully right over the longer term. And, a key takeaway for me is, if you're starting out in your investment journey, just start off simple, nice and easy, and would suggest, get educated, which I wish I did back then, get educated on, what are managed funds, exchange traded funds, index funds, because there's a lot easier ways to sort of dip your toe in rather than trying to push all of your money into one company, so to speak, which is, incredibly risky. And I think it ties back to, talking a little bit about business, Steve. If you're not really in the driver's seat of a company, say us talking about Link Wealth Group, so we're sort of majority shareholders and we can make the decisions and the success of the business is, I suppose, really up to us in a way, and all the team. But when you're investing into a company like a share, when you have no control over it, there's a lot of risk involved. So
huge, and you can't manage that risk, really. You just totally you can't manage it because it's totally out of your hands. So you're right. I think especially if you haven't got to investing yourself a lot, the best way is that diversification across thousands of companies. You can't beat that, because it simply reduces that risk to not zero, but to a point where you can definitely accept it, right?
100%. And, touching on the social media stuff, because obviously we're doing a lot on social media, and we see a lot, we're speaking with a lot of people day to day. What are some of the, misconceptions, or people are coming to you with these, beliefs that, maybe aren't right, or maybe they got something, from growing up through their parents and have followed it. But is there any sort of like misconceptions or common beliefs that you kind of see that people come with, which you just don't really, make sense, they're not true, or they're just kind of been misguided along the journey?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of them. I hear one commonly, especially passed down from parents, about I've got to pay off my mortgage. That
Huge.
one pops up quite often, and I see it. I see it too often, to be honest, where people just concentrate on paying down their mortgage, and it
Yep.
just doesn't allow you to grow wealth.
Yep.
Sure, at the right times and stages of your life, that is the ideal thing to do.
Yep.
But when you're in a phase of growing wealth and money and accumulation, you've got to get assets.
For
It's
sure.
as simple as that. And way too many people I see come with that preconceived idea when they come meet with us and talk to us. And that's something that we got to change. And our job as advisors is one part technical, but one part coach. And that's definitely a big coaching piece that I see across the people that come through social media. The other parts probably, we get a lot of questions around tax, and a particular investment might always pay off. There's no particular investment that always pays off. There's always ups and downs and sideways movements for all types of assets.
Sure.
And I think a preconceived idea that a particular asset will always go up is obviously not going to work. I think back to unfortunately a lot of people got involved with that crypto stuff, and thinking that was always going to work, and look how that sort of panned out. But yeah, I think part of our job, and I think that's the idea of this social media. I see the social media that we do, it tells people what we do, and that's the best thing about it. And I think for financial advisors out there, I think there's not enough education about what advisors do, and I think we're definitely laying the landscape out there in Australia and overseas, for that matter, about what we do, which is fantastic. And how about yourself, mate? What do you see come through the channels?
Yeah, well, I think to the point, I think you're really highlighting the fact that like financial literacy in the way that it should be taught in Australia is just not taught in the way that it needs to, and it's obviously an initiative that we're trying to, directly address here at Link Wealth Group with our, Beyond School program that we've been into schools and have already kicked off, because it's, it all begins in those earlier years, and if you can kind of get exposed to it at an earlier age, it's going to set yourself up, because I see clients in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that, some of the basic stuff they don't even know what their interest rate is on their mortgage. They don't understand a loan term, or the difference between good debt and bad debt, and all those bits and pieces. And I think a big part of it all also comes back to your parents, and it's always something I like to ask my clients about is, what was your upbringing like? How were your parents around money? And the one that you said is, avoid getting into debt or pay down debt as soon as you possibly can. Like, I see that one so often. And I always say to clients, how your parents grew up when, interest rates were 17 or 18%, like it made sense to pay down debt in those times. But we just come out of the back end of having cash, which was nearly free when interest rates were 2%. So we're just in different times, and it's a big part of the education process that we need to do with our clients is, what may have applied then doesn't necessarily apply now. And I think another big one you always see from generally the older generation is, pay down debt, and also, save as much money as you possibly can, and or not invest into the share market because it's too risky. And again, the same equation, saving your money made sense, 20 years ago when you were getting 8 or 9% return on your savings account. But, for the last few years, up until just now, when interest rates have now come up a little bit, you're getting less than 1% on your savings account, and inflation's higher than that. So you're virtually going backwards on your money. And that upbringing, I think, is really, really critical. And, if anyone that, listens or watches this that's got kids, I think the earlier you can get them exposed to money in any way, shape, or form is critical. And 100% we need to get it into the schooling system. When I went back the other month talking to my high school, which was about 10 years out now from high school, which was quite interesting getting back there. But just talking to the year 10s, 11s, and 12s about just basic financial literacy. It's just not taught in schools in the way it needs to, and actually preparing for life after school. And schooling's great, prepares you and does a lot of good things, but I think there's a huge gap in there, which I think as advisors can be really at the forefront around kind of mending or closing that gap, so to speak.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you've been out to a couple of schools and presented about money, and this big ex-security guard comes out and presents to them about money. How have they taken it out there, and what's been the feedback?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think there's only positive that people can take from, my short sort of existence in life and journey so far, because it's, you kind of leave high school. And that's why I think it's, not being so far disconnected from being in high school, only 10 years out, I can really relate to the students and what they go through, and, the expectation of trying to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life at 18. Like, I had no idea what I wanted to do, when I was 18, I actually thought I was going to be a UFC fighter back then as well. So you just don't know what life's going to bring. But yeah, I think the earlier we can get into the schools around this stuff, probably motivate some more people to get into the industry in itself. There's obviously a lack of financial advisors given all that's happened in the industry. So many people have actually left, but just more so teaching people these life skills that are just critical and that you need to have to just live the life that you ultimately want. You don't have to buy 15 houses to be financially free here in Australia. So there's just a lot of the basics that you need to do consistently over the long term, and it can help you get there. So
Yeah. So you got out of school, you did a bit of work, then you got into finances, and then
yeah.
all of a sudden you come to Link and you've ended up being an owner director of Link. How did all that happen, mate? Give us
Yeah,
a
it all
rundown.
happened pretty quick. The long story in short is kind of got into the financial planning industry, which always thought was going to be the case when I started my studies. Wanted to work with money, and financial planning kind of sounded like the thing. Bounced around a couple of businesses earlier on, which didn't really give financial advice in the way that I thought financial advice really was. And then obviously ended up with Link Wealth Group, which I think would have been good 4.5, 5 years now. And then things just took off. Had all of the right tools, all the right people like yourself and some other advisors in the business that really gave me all the tools, and I just absolutely soaked it up as a sponge, and all the opportunity was there. And I was always interested in business, and I think I actually still remember when you interviewed me very early on when I first came to Link. I think you asked me where you're going to be in 3 or 4 years, and I said, look, I'll either be say a business partner, so to speak, or I'll be starting my own business. And that's kind of exactly how it played out. And here we are now. We're in business together, and I think it's all just really getting started, and we're just kind of starting to take off, I think.
Yeah, I see a lot of you too.
Probably too much, I think.
Too much, yeah. So if I asked you a question, and I'm quite interested in this answer, what is the one ingredient that you need to get to where you got to, or have got to? Yeah, and I agree, we're just starting the journey, but you've had a very successful last couple of years in particular. What's that one ingredient you go, you know what, that is the one key item you need to have to get to where you are? What would that be?
Yeah, I think there's a few, but if I was putting my finger on one, it would be that like discipline, or the relentlessness to sort of never quit. I think that's what it would be, like getting focused on something, and then no matter what happens on the pathway, there's going to be setbacks, but always pushing through. And I think the discipline factor is something that's like kind of helped me throughout my whole life. Like I was a pretty crazy kid through high school, did a lot of different things and so on, but then got into martial arts at a very young age, and that instilled discipline into me. And then I kind of feel like now, any time I set my mind on a task or a goal or whatever it may be, like I'm just locked in on it. And then no matter what happens, I just push through whatever the pain may be. Like obviously just ran a marathon over the weekend and didn't really even train for it. And that freaking hurt a lot. But it was just in my mind that I'm going to get through this. I'm not going to stop no matter whatever happens. And my feet were bloodied up and blistered and in a world of pain, but just kept pushing through. But I honestly think that applies in any aspect of life and business or fitness or whatever anyone's trying to do. Just discipline to get up and do what you need, or what you need to do when you sometimes don't want to do it. I think is very, very critical. But that's probably one of the biggest ones for me. There's definitely a few others, but what if I throw that back at you? What would you say?
Yeah, look, it's probably similar. I was thinking about this. I wrote it down. Look, I think if I look back on my career and where I got to and starting Link and where it is today, I think passion, like you're just completely passionate about what you do. And so, and I sometimes you hear me say to some of the staff, it becomes a lifestyle because you're just so passionate about what you do. It's not, I don't think there's been a day since I founded Link that I felt that it was a job ever. I just, even through Royal Commissions, and I just was purely sold on wanting to do it every single day. But to do that, I had to be totally passionate about this career, about this job, about the business. And I don't think you can be successful to the point where you're top of the game unless you're 100% passionate. And I totally agree. You've got to be all in. Like you just said, you've got to have that discipline. You've got to get up every day, show up every day, no matter what. But if you don't have that underlying drive to be absolutely sold on it and passionate about it, you probably need those two worlds to come together to really, you could be maybe mediocre, and get by. But if you want to be the best in the game, you've got to have that absolute passion, I reckon.
And it's it's interesting because if you kind of look at the real successful people out there, or those that making abundances of wealth, Elon Musk or whoever it may be, like there's a greater cause above of what they're trying to actually do. It's not just about them lining their pockets with money.
Yeah.
Elon Musk trying to go and colonize Mars or whatever
Yeah.
it may be. There's a greater mission, but it's a genuine, it's a genuine passion, and it's it's tough to try and I feel for people out there that don't actually find their passion ever, and they work in a job day in and day out, and they just do it to kind of get by, and they don't really have any direction, so to speak, which is
so in saying that, then so for people listening in who are maybe in careers or jobs and don't have that passion, what would be the message?
Yeah, I think it's quite simple that you just got to get out there and take risks. And then, you don't want to have that sort of woe is me mentality, like, I've got kids, I don't have time and whatever. Like, if you want it bad enough, you'll figure out a way. But even if, say, the situation, you work your 9 to 5, maybe you've got a couple of kids as well. Let's just paint a bit of a picture here. And, you say that you don't really have any time. Well, I would suggest probably back the clock up to maybe 4 or 5 a.m., get up a little bit earlier. So in those hours, if you want to, I think if you want to escape what job or career path you're in and you want to pivot into something else, I don't think it's ever truly too late if you got the passion and want to do it. But you got to be realistic about it. I would say if you're working in 9 to 5, keep working in 9 to 5, get paid, pay your bills. But then it's more importantly what you're then doing outside of that 9 to 5. Like if you want to transition into something that's paying you more or whatever it may be, or start your own business, well then start outside of that. So from 6 to 8, get a couple of hours in maybe before work, from 5 to 9. After that, once you finish work, got to get a couple of hours in either side there, and totally get it. There's give and take, there's work-life balance, and I don't know what the definition of work-life balance actually is, but we're all juggling different things. But I like to think that you go through seasons, and you got to think that you're not going to be operating at this rate forever. So if you can suffer and push for a couple of key years to maybe get yourself out of where you are, you're not going to be doing it for the next 20 or 30 years. And I think that's a way for anyone that could realistically adopt. But the problem is having the discipline to, all right, it's day one, you might do it for the first week, but then after the first week, you haven't seen any results, you haven't gotten to where you need to be, so then you just give up and stop doing it. So it's just, having that grit. And mind you, that's something that, we as advisors we actually help clients out with, and holding them accountable to, plans and actually pushing them through, because, it can get lonely on that path yourself. And until you kind of build that, I think, resilience and discipline, which is kind of like a muscle in a way, you have to work it out and build it so it gets stronger. I think that's probably a way of doing it. I don't know. Would you throw in any other ways or?
Yeah, look, I 100% think you're right. But what the point, this work-life balance thing is a funny one, and it constantly comes up, right?
It does.
We hear this term, and I don't think you and I are great examples of probably the work-life balance. Well, to us, it's a good work-life balance. But I was in Dubai last week for a family holiday and just continue to work. So, but that's what I enjoy. So, that was my work-life balance. And it's a funny term, and I think it's something that is different for everyone, this work-life balance. But if people, and you're right, we do coach people on that balance of what to get right. But what do you think it takes to be, say you want to be told, say you want to change your career and be super successful and enjoy it at the same time and have the right balance? How do people out there achieve that? What are some of the tools they could maybe use to achieve that, you think?
Yeah, I think it's just, well, you got to be smart with your time. Yeah. So just like, you got to be not scrolling through TikTok unless you're obviously watching our videos, then you can scroll through TikTok. But like little things like that, you just don't realize, like, when you're losing your attention, you're jumping between things. So say you want to be super organized, with your schedule. One other one was just coming to me as well. So it's just gone past my mind.
Well, I reckon, look, I write down everything every day. So,
For sure.
my trick is, that day, every day I've got a list, and I write everything down in the morning, even if I repeat it from the day before if I haven't quite got to it. And I tick them off. And for me, that just works, and it always has. And I don't know why it works. It just works. So I've just stuck to it because it works. And sure, people say like it's a pen and paper and probably dark ages, with all the tech going around these days. I know you've got your whiz bang tools and stuff, but it just works for me. And I think it's finding the right system that just works for you to get stuff done.
Totally.
And I think, again, it's just different for everyone, and everyone's just got to find their niche of how to do it and try different things until you find that landing spot. I think that's a good way to do it. And I think set the expectations for yourself of what that work-life balance looks like.
Yep.
Probably agree it with your partner too.
For sure. Would help, I think, for longevity.
That helps. Get that on the page, and I've got a very understanding wife in terms of my work-life balance, and I know you've got a very understanding partner too in Alana, because these businesses take a lot of work. But I think if you get that on the same page and find what works for you, and then combine that with your passion, and have a very strong underlying work ethic, you're probably they're the key items to get it right.
And I think one to add to that is adding on to all of what you've just said there is like when you're like be present and 100% in on whatever you're doing. So like when it's when it's work time or you're in the business, like you're locked in, you're on it, you're not distracted, you're just pushing, you're not trying to do 3 different things at once. But then when it's home with the kids or with the wife or whatever it may be, as hard as it can be, is actually trying to be present there as well, which is it's obviously hard these days because you're just always connected, you're online, you're on emails and so on. And I don't have the privilege of having kids yet, which probably happen in the next couple of years, but it's something that it's in the back of my mind. 2, 4, who knows? But I think like be present, and even like with when we're meeting with clients, like you've got to give clients your all, or in any business for that matter, whoever you're working with, like you want to give them your 100%. You don't want to sort of half-ass it, so to speak. So being present, like when I'm with a client, like I'm locked in, I'm all about them. That's all I'm thinking about. My mind's not, wandering around whatever's happening in my other 50 meetings for the day or whatever it may be. And I think that's something that people can definitely adopt with all of what you said, and just being present. Like there's only 24 hours, so it's just trying to make the most of them as best as you ultimately can. So
yeah. And so just to close, mate, for people out there want to maybe start investing or dip their toe in business or whatever it may be, what are some key takeaways you think to maybe just get started and get on the journey?
For sure. So, if you're trying to get started on your journey, I always say you just got to get educated to begin with. So, things like short courses, reading books, podcasts like this, other podcasts, there's obviously plenty out there. First of all, just start getting educated. But if you want to actually fast track your journey, and if you're in a position to do so, I would always suggest just have a chat with an advisor. Like we don't charge to have an initial 15-minute chat with someone. And in that 15-minute period of time, we can ascertain whether or not you could even benefit from any financial advice in the first place, or if you can't, at least give you the tools to then go out and sort your own situation out, maybe get better educated, learn all the right tools, whatever you need to be to kind of get started on your journey. But if you really want to fast track it and you're in a position to do so, well, that's where you would consider actually working with a financial advisor, someone external that can look at your situation with no bias, no emotion attached to it. Because to that point, it's something I see a lot of clients struggle with, particularly if they're in a relationship, is when you make decisions, a lot of it is emotional when you're making decisions, and it's hard to kind of have that sort of objective opinion on your sort of situation. And that's really a lot of what we do, is we bring that unbiased, unemotional decision to people's situations and actually help them kind of cut through the thick of shit that's going on in their life. Like there's all these shiny options out there, like you're on social media, making $1 million overnight doing this short course, or buying crypto or whatever it may be. But we can just actually help people cut through the noise. And if you're not going to get educated yourself, but you're in a position, just reach out to an advisor and always preach it. You want to have your dream team around you. If your true goal is to be successful in life, I think some of those key people would be, a mortgage broker, help out with the loans, an accountant, optimize your taxes, financial advisor, doing a bit of everything, investing, cash flow, but kind of project managing everyone in a way. There's probably a lawyer in there, a buyer's agent, but if you have those key people around you, there's really nothing that you can't conquer, but it all starts with you in the end. And what about you, Steve? Would you throw in anything else there?
No, look, I totally agree, mate. I think education is key. Combine that with good advice. I've had that across my whole journey. I've had great advice, and I've had 20 years of it, more longer in terms of education. And those two things put together is just such a powerful tool with the right team around you. And I think, from an investment point of view, dipping your toe in the water and trying, small investments on ETS or managed funds is a great way to start. And
sure.
Just don't do too much until you understand it.
Yeah.
And then business-wise, as we said, if it's investing in businesses or getting involved in business, it's that passion and dedication is just key. And I think be passionate about what you do, and you'll be very happy, and you'll probably be very successful because you're finally passionate about the work you're doing.
Totally agree, mate. Well, it's been good talking, Steve. And obviously, guys, this is a regular podcast that we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking all things, finance, investing, as we've been touching on, but even, getting into some deeper stuff more from a, mindset point of view and how you can actually make some real improvements to your life. So, Steve, appreciate you being here, and we'll chat again soon.
Thanks, mate. Chat soon.
Done.
Bye.
Cheers.